In 2025, there are a few countries that Americans just can't visit, whether it's because of government rules, safety concerns, or ongoing conflicts. While many places around the world are open to tourists, these countries either completely ban U.S. travelers or make it really hard to get in. Some of these countries are in the middle of active wars, others have serious political issues with the U.S., and a few are so dangerous that even visiting could put you in a lot of trouble. Let's take a closer look at these countries. First up, we have Haiti. Haiti is a country with a rich history and a unique cultural identity, but right now it's facing serious challenges. Once a destination for travelers seeking a more adventurous Caribbean experience, Haiti is now considered one of the most dangerous places for Americans to visit. So what happened? Haiti has been dealing with political instability for years, but recent events have made the situation even worse. The assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in 2021 created a power vacuum that criminal gangs quickly took advantage of. These gangs now control large parts of the country, and the government has struggled to regain control over many areas. The U.S. State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory, urging Americans to avoid travel to Haiti due to high crime rates. Kidnappings, especially targeting foreigners, are unfortunately common. Even in areas that might seem safer, the risks are significant. If you're considering a trip to Haiti in 2025, be aware that it's a place where safety is a major concern. The U.S. government has made it clear that if you find yourself in trouble, getting help could be very difficult. Belarus might not be at the top of most people's travel lists, but if it was on yours, you'll want to reconsider. Often called Europe's last dictatorship, Belarus is ruled by President Alexander Lukashenko, who's been in power since 1994 and controls the country with a firm hand. Protests against his government are met with heavy crackdowns, and the country has grown more hostile toward Western influence, especially from the United States. On top of that, Belarus has aligned itself closely with Russia, even allowing Russian military forces to operate from its land in recent conflicts. This has led the U.S. government to impose strict sanctions on Belarus, and diplomatic relations between the two countries are worse than ever. So what does this mean for Americans thinking about visiting? Well, making a trip to Belarus in 2025 is nearly impossible. Even if you manage to get a visa, you risk being detained or questioned just for being American. Belarusian authorities have been known to arrest foreign nationals on false charges and use them as political leverage. The bottom line? If you're carrying a U.S. passport, Belarus is not a place you should consider visiting. Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, is a country known for its stunning landscapes, ancient temples, and rich cultural history. But beneath its beauty, there's a harsh reality that makes it off-limits for American travelers in 2025. The trouble started in February 2021 when the military overthrew the democratically elected government. This sparked mass protests, which were met with violent responses. Since then, the country has been in turmoil, with thousands of people killed and even more imprisoned. So why does this matter for Americans? First, the U.S. government has imposed sanctions on Myanmar, making it difficult for U.S. citizens to enter. But more importantly, the country is in chaos. Armed resistance groups are fighting against the military, and violence can break out at any moment. There's also the issue of consular support, or, more accurately, the lack of it. If you get into trouble in Myanmar, don't expect much help from the U.S. Embassy. The embassy's operations are limited, and with the military in control of everything, carrying a U.S. passport could make you a target. In short, Myanmar in 2025 is one of the most dangerous places for Americans. No matter how beautiful the temples or landscapes might be, it's simply not worth the risk. Venezuela was once one of the richest countries in South America, thanks to its vast oil reserves. But today, it's a completely different story. Economic collapse, political turmoil, and widespread violence have turned Venezuela into one of the most unstable countries in the world. For Americans, visiting Venezuela in 2025 is a massive risk. The U.S. and Venezuela have had a tense relationship for years, and American citizens have been arrested on suspicion of espionage, even when they were just tourists. Crime in Venezuela is another major issue. Kidnappings, armed robberies, and carjackings are common, and foreigners are often targeted. Even if you stay in what might seem like a safe area, the lack of law enforcement means you're essentially on your own. The U.S. government has placed Venezuela under its highest-level travel advisory, warning Americans to stay away. Russia has always been a complex country when it comes to travel, but in 2025, it's practically off-limits for Americans. Tensions between the U.S. and Russia have been at their highest since the Cold War, largely due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The U.S. has imposed heavy sanctions on Russia, and in response, Russia has made it increasingly difficult for Americans to enter. Even if you manage to get a visa, traveling in Russia as an American is extremely risky. The Russian government has been known to detain foreign nationals, especially Americans, on vague charges of espionage. If you get arrested, don't expect an easy way out. Russia has a history of using foreign prisoners as political bargaining chips. On top of that, safety concerns are real. Moscow and St. Petersburg might still look like bustling modern cities, but outside of those areas, things can get unpredictable fast. With heightened military tensions and an unpredictable government, Russia is one of the most dangerous places for an American in 2025. Ukraine has been a war zone since 2022, and in 2025, the conflict is far from over. While many people around the world admire Ukraine's resilience in the face of Russian aggression, the truth is that the country remains one of the most dangerous places an American could visit. Missile strikes, drone attacks, and heavy artillery bombardments are still an everyday reality in many parts of Ukraine. Even cities that might seem safer, like Kyiv or Lviv, are still under constant threat of air raids. Infrastructure has been severely damaged, with power and water outages happening frequently. For American travelers, the risks are even greater. Not only is there the physical danger of being caught in the crossfire, but there's also the political tension between the U.S. and Russia. If an American were to be captured in a Russian-occupied part of Ukraine, they could face serious consequences, including imprisonment. While Ukraine remains an inspiring and resilient country, it is absolutely not a place for tourism in 2025. The U.S. government strongly advises against travel, and for good reason. Afghanistan has been a no-go zone for Americans ever since the Taliban took over in 2021. Despite their claims of restoring order, the reality on the ground is far from stable. Terrorist groups like ISIS-K are still active and continue to launch deadly attacks throughout the country. The Taliban's rule has also brought back extreme restrictions on human rights, making Afghanistan one of the most oppressive places in the world. For Americans, the risks are immense. The U.S. Embassy in Kabul is no longer operational, meaning there's no consular support if something goes wrong. And given the Taliban's history with American citizens, anyone with a U.S. passport could easily become a target. There have already been cases of foreign nationals, including Americans, being detained or disappearing under suspicious circumstances. Lebanon is a country with a rich history, incredible food, and stunning landscapes. But unfortunately, it's also dealing with one of the worst economic collapses in modern history. Since 2019, Lebanon has been spiraling into financial ruin, with its currency losing nearly all of its value. Banks have frozen accounts, people can't access their own money, and inflation has skyrocketed. The result? Widespread poverty, food shortages, and an increase in crime. If that weren't enough, Lebanon also faces the constant threat of conflict. The country shares a border with Israel, and tensions between Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed militant group, and Israel have escalated dramatically. For American travelers, the risks go beyond just instability. The U.S. has labeled Hezbollah a terrorist organization, and since Hezbollah has a strong presence in Lebanon, Americans could find themselves in danger simply because of their nationality. While Lebanon is still home to beautiful historical sites and a vibrant culture, the risks in 2025 far outweigh the rewards. Iran has been on bad terms with the U.S. for over 4 decades, and in 2025, the situation is worse than ever. Diplomatic relations between the two countries are almost non-existent, and tensions over nuclear programs and sanctions have made travel nearly impossible. Technically, Iran does allow American tourists, but the process of getting a visa is complicated and restrictive. Even if you do get one, the risks are enormous. Iran has a history of detaining American citizens on charges of espionage, often without any real evidence. In 2025, the risk of being arrested in Iran just for being American is higher than ever. And if you do end up in an Iranian prison, the US government has almost no way to help you. Iran does not recognize dual citizenship, so even if you have another passport, you won't be treated as anything other than American. If you're considering visiting Iran for its ancient sites or Persian culture, you should reconsider. Last, but certainly not least, Yemen is arguably one of the most dangerous countries on this entire list. The country has been in a state of war since 2014, and in 2025, the situation is still catastrophic. Yemen is home to one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Millions of people are facing starvation, hospitals barely function, and the country's infrastructure is in ruins. The ongoing conflict between the government, Houthi rebels, and various extremist groups makes traveling here virtually impossible. For Americans, the risks are even more severe. Terrorist organizations, including Al-Qaeda and ISIS, operate freely in many parts of Yemen, and they actively target Westerners. Kidnappings are common, and ransom demands can go into the millions. The US government has issued its highest-level travel warning for Yemen, essentially saying that if you go there, you're on your own. There is no functioning US embassy, no consular support, and no way to safely evacuate. So, there you have it. 10 countries that Americans are either banned from visiting or strongly advised to avoid in 2025. While there are plenty of amazing places to see around the world, some destinations are just too dangerous, unstable, or politically risky for US travelers. If you're planning to travel internationally this year, always check the latest travel advisories and think carefully before picking a destination. Your safety should always come first, no matter how much of an adventure you're looking for. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.